thing about Monday mornings is that it's just not that easy to get going sometimes, especially when it's raining like it is today. But you know, you got to get after it. And I think that's one of the things about, you know, when we talk about trading and investing, it's just, you just have to be disciplined. That really is the number one thing. Let's get after it here today, get into the rhythm and see what we can make happen. I'm about to get to the office. I have about somewhere between like a 10 and 15 minute walk to the office every morning. It kind of depends where I am. I've got a couple offices. What I typically do in these 10 minutes or 15 minutes, I really try to catch up on a little bit of news. So I typically listen to, with my headphones, you know, a couple of news things I like to listen to, a couple of video clips from analysts, things like that, some Bloomberg TV clips, analysts, CNBC, just, you know, some of the people that I like to follow. You know, at the end of the day, I want to spend as little time as possible in my office, in front of the screens, because it's a lot of time already that I spend there. And so anything I can do to walk, bike, skate, in the winter snowboard or golf even, you know, in the summer, consuming research, you know, helps me stay out of the office. That's my plan. The first thing we need to do is just kind of prep things a little bit. You know, one of the things that I will make a separate video on one time is I actually have a separate laptop. Like, this is really kind of my main computer. It's a MacBook Pro, something or another. This is my baby. I use it for everything. I'll show you the office here in a minute, but this thing goes with me home every night. I take it obviously on all trips, everything I do. But then I have my main analytics computer. This is a PC. So I'm gonna set up my Mac over here. This is just a matter of plugging in one plug and then we're ready to go. Open the window here. Let's fire up these computers. All right, here we go. That on, then we've got this thing. Computer on, where are we here? Here we go. Very important notepad. This is where I take a lot of notes every single morning. Glasses, let's go. When I come to this office, it always takes me, I'm gonna say probably about a good 10 minutes to set everything up from this computer here that I showed you before that has the MacBook. This thing travels everywhere. I have to set everything up here. So basically it's just a simple plug-in to get it up and running, but then I have to make sure I've got everything up here. So on this computer, again, this is the one that goes everywhere. I typically have news, email, communications. That would include things like, for example, the Wall Street Journal is always constantly up here. Things like Slack, Teams, WhatsApp. I do most of my conference calls here. I have conference calls throughout the day. I'm going to show you here in a second setting up this the big computer here. Another mic, just like this one. We're using the Rode setups. This is just good quality, because I believe that when you talk to people all day long like I do, it's important to have good quality. But let me finish setting up here, and then I'll show you what the main computer here. These 4 screens, what that looks like. I just got a phone call from a friend of mine who is working on a fantastic algorithm that essentially analyzes the psychology of the largest computer algorithms that trade. Let's talk about the sort of the Monday morning focus. So what this is, again, that setup that I mentioned before. And what I'm really looking for Monday mornings, I do need to spend quite a bit of time on the Wall Street Journal now. Obviously, you know, there are other newspapers one can use as well, by all means, Financial Times, whatever. I like the Journal. I've read it my whole life, so, you know, that's kind of where I'm at. But there's usually 1 or 2 really good articles in here, particularly the Heard on the Street column. And just to be clear, this is not an advertisement for the Wall Street Journal. No one's paying me for doing this. You know, just the Heard on the Street column is one that a lot of hedge fund guys and people that I know read, and so you can find that in the markets and finance tab of the Wall Street Journal. But that's one thing I do. So that gets us over here to the main trading setup, and let's spend a little bit of time here to go through what we're checking out on the beginning of the week. So at the beginning of the week, what's a little bit different about the beginning of the week versus the Tuesday morning or regular weekdays, I tend to take a bigger picture approach. So I really want to make sure I know what the weekly charts look like. So for example, let's just here look at the SPY or the S&P 500, and I will look at this on a weekly basis. So I don't necessarily need to do this exercise every week, but this is a week, every day I should say, but every Monday, I want to make sure I know what the weekly charts look like. So that's from a charting perspective. I want to know exactly what the weekly candles look like. This is just the technical part of it. And of course, I take a bigger step back on rates and currency. So for example, right now, as we are here on a Monday, let me quickly bring up, for example, 2-year yields, right? So one of the things that I like to focus on in the rate space is understanding like what happened to bond yields. And in this case, you can see bond yields really kind of had like a non-event week last week, meaning we didn't really break down, we didn't break to the upside. So I'm just kind of, it's wait and see mode, but it's good to know that on a week over week basis, not that much happened. Intra-week, something may have happened, but week over week, not so much. So, I also really need to make sure I know what the economic calendar looks like at the beginning of the week. I like to map that out. So I look at the economic calendar. So I see, for example, here Monday economic data points, and I typically look at US data points. I look at German and Japanese data points as well, but these are the big ones, those 3 countries. So I see the whole week. Same thing for earnings. I do need to make sure I know what the earnings calendar looks like. We are currently, as I'm recording this, in earnings season. So I can see what the earnings calendar looks like. I map it out for the week so that so I don't have to and a lot of earnings right now. So I typically look for the big ones. I can actually sort this here by even just NASDAQ 100 stocks or S&P 500 stocks, but I need to have a broad idea what the earnings calendar looks like. So that's honestly kind of the bigger picture of what I look for at the start of the week, and from there on, the next thing I need to make sure I do on a Monday is express a lot of patience. So let's talk about that. So when the week starts, typically unless there was a major news event over the weekend, it tends to be a bit of a choppy start. So a lot of things that I always make sure that our clients, be that on the trading side or investment advisory side, they know that typically Monday mornings is not a high probability time to trade, because you tend to have a lot of news that has to be digested. Again, unless the news was decisively positive or negative and the market just blows higher or lower decisively, unless that happens, Monday tends to be a bit of a choppy trading session, particularly the morning session. That's even more so the case if we have an options expiration day on Friday, like a big one, like the monthly ones. Then you tend to have the Monday morning trading session experience what I call options expiration hangover. So, Monday mornings, I try to not make big bets from a trading perspective. Even from an investment perspective, because a lot of times also you have liquidity that's just lacking, right? So I think that's another thing about Mondays that's important, is just not to get, just because it's a Monday, and I see some people make this mistake and I understand why, just because it's a new week and they've had the weekend of not trading, all of a sudden they come in very antsy to do a trade, and they're kind of trading with themselves, or at least in a low probability environment. So that's the other reason I like to take things slow on a Monday morning from a trading perspective. Again, unless we had major news. It doesn't happen that much that markets gap up significantly or up or down on Monday. Happens, but it's not like something that happens every single week. I just find that on Mondays, typically people get a bit overly anxious to trade, as I said, and you can see, for example, right now here gold is up like 1.6% almost, the gold futures contract. And typically speaking, I see a lot of these moves tend to fail on a Monday morning. So I'm recording this here very early in the morning, but typically speaking, these kind of big moves on a Monday, it doesn't matter whether it's currencies, commodities, obviously equities or whatever, they do actually end up tending to fail. So again, that's another reason why Monday morning is a time when I like to take things a bit slower. All right, I have a quick breakfast meeting to tend to. When I come back, we are going to take you through the opening minutes of a Monday morning's trading activity. Show you how that works. See you in a bit. All right, guys, here we are. The market just opened about 25 minutes ago here on a Monday. And we are looking at a market that is essentially choppy, like I mentioned before. Let me just give you a bit of an update here of what's going on. And this is more, again, this is meant to be about sort of an update around like kind of what we typically do in the beginning of a week, as opposed to a specific like what's happening right here right now. So
I'll show you a couple of things here, and I think that'll help you to start your week as a trader as well.
So as I mentioned before, one of the things that I want to look at or be careful of on a Monday morning is making sure I don't do something when there's nothing to do, when the algos are just catching up with things. So I think patience is an important word for a Monday morning. What you're looking at here, I'm looking at the NASDAQ 100 here, and the QQQ ETF, and I have this on a 5-minute chart just to kind of give you an idea. So this is where today's trading began there, and this is so each one of these bars is 5 minutes. I'm trying to zoom in. So you can see it's kind of boring. It's not much to do. I've got these gaps colored here. So in other words, like, so for example, today the market gapped, closed there last Friday, open here this morning. So now I'm watching this consolidation phase to see if we might be able to push back up here, or ultimately maybe even we start filling the gap down there, which is a gap from a number of days ago when we gapped the market higher. So patience on a Monday morning, I think, is very, very important. And that, quite frankly, is probably my number one message to start your week. Don't try to front run the market. Be patient.
If this video helped you, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, you give us a thumbs up like, and if you want to see this approach in action, you will want to join us in our Set the Market morning call, which happens at 9 o'clock Eastern Time, Monday through Thursday. Make sure you join us for that in the link down below. Again, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you in the next video.